which in seasons yields his fruit, green his leaves are light. All he does prospers well, but the wicked are not so. They are chaff before the wind, driven to and fro.
All right, shalom, everybody, and welcome. Shabbat shalom. We are going to do some recapping of last week. We went over Acts 23 and what was going on with Paul, and then we're going to go on to Acts 24. So it's very important that we learn and get what he wants us to know. So a lot of times we live our life the way that we want to live our life, but that's why we do this, right? We have the scriptures to let us know what we should be doing, how we should be living, and how that all should be going. We are looking for James 4:11 says, brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. There we go. Thank you. So we went over last week. Let's see if I can pull it up here. It says, but those standing nearby said, how dare you insult the high priest, right? So again, we're recapping before we get to that, going back. How dare you insult the high priest? Brothers, Paul replied, I was not aware that the high priest, for it is written, do not speak evil about the ruler of your people. So we have to be careful of this thing because we speak evil of each other. Not saying we do, but it's different between going to a building and talking about the pastor and the choir and all these type of things that we've kind of learned to do. Sadly, we kind of learned to say bad, evil things, and even of each other. If we don't agree with particularly what's being said, we think we can say, hey, that's just not my cup of tea. That's just not what I got to believe. And that doesn't really work real good. That's not a biblical concept. James 4:11 says, brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and are judges of the law. When you judge the law, you're not keeping it, but you're setting in upon a judgment seat. Now, this is very serious things that we learn because we don't want to be judges, right? We don't want to be judged with same judgment that we throw out to others. So we have to be careful of these things as well, because if we come up and say, this brother did this and this brother did that, and he's all washed up, he's all wet, and we justify that, if we're not careful, we can get in trouble with Elohim ourselves, as we see. Plus, it's commanded, right? We go to Exodus 22:28, because he said, is it written in the law not to do this, right? You must not blaspheme Elohim or curse the ruler of your people. And we see this all the time. I don't really watch a whole lot of the CNN, Fox, and all that, but we see this all the time, bashing. You wouldn't even think a president is a president anymore. If you look at other countries, there's no respect. There's none, right? So just like what the brother read there, Felix, if we're not the salt of the earth, what are we doing? If we're not doing this right, correctly, we look and sound just like everybody else if we're not very careful. So if we're not very, very careful, we can find ourselves in a whole lot of trouble there. We can find ourselves speaking ill, and just like it says, of brothers, sisters, rulers, teachers, people that are doing his work. Now, to correct or to say you need help in this, or maybe do this, or something like that is helping, but to just all out and say, look, you're just a sinner because your teaching is just they're actually going against the very scriptures, right? So we have to be very careful that, and against brothers and sisters. We are supposed to be the congregation of Elohim. We are supposed to love one another, and we're truly brothers and sisters. And I believe we act that way here, but we see other, even, churchianity, I would call it, because it's not what it's supposed to be. But we see that going on, and they go and talk about each other, and they go in the other room and just horrific things that should never be said, that should never go forward, should never come out of their mouths. And also the brothers and sisters. And one more thing until we get in, go on with Acts 24. But like it says, Elohim, right? Don't speak against him. Don't put anyone in between him. And if we're not careful, we have seen that some of these pastors and people, they act like they are, right? When you go to these places, well, what did the pastor say? What did the pastor say? What did the pastor say? So you have to be careful there as well, and not make them Elohim, not make them that's why we read the scriptures and we do what it says. So we have to walk a very thin line and go with what the scriptures say. With all that being said, we will start Acts chapter 24. And after 5 days, Ananias, high priest, descended with the elders and with a certain ordinator named Tilius, who informed the governor against Paul. And when he was called forth, Tilius began to accuse him, saying, seeing that by thee, we enjoy great quietness, and that very worthy deeds are done into this nation by thy providence. We accept it always, and in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness, notwithstanding that I be not further tedious unto thee, I pray thee that thou wouldest hear us on thy clemency and a few words. We have found this man a pestilent fellow and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes, who also is gone about to profane the temple, whom we took, but have judged according to our law. But the chief captain, Silas, came upon us, and with great violence took him away out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come unto thee, by examining of whom thyself mayest take knowledge of all these things, whereof we accuse him. And all Yehuda also assisted, saying that these things were so. Then Paul, after the governor had beckoned unto him to speak, answered, forasmuch as I know that thou hast been of many years a judge unto this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself, because thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with any, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogues nor in the city. Neither can they prove the things whereof they accuse me now. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets. So we see he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, right? And they're saying what we see, just like what we went over. If we're not careful, accusing brother and sister and accusing others of doing things that they've never done. And he's saying, I've never done any of this. What's the problem? Why are you accusing me of doing things that I've never done? You never caught me doing this. I wasn't causing commotion. I wasn't doing this. Then Paul, after the governor had beckoned him and to speak, answered, for as much as I know that hast been many years a judge into this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself. So he's not only on trial, but he's nicely putting this, right? Now they're trying to kill him, right? They just slapped him in the mouth. They're just, they're trying to destroy him. They're trying They want him to die. They want to publicly kill him, right? And we can see this in today's world. If you see righteousness and anybody trying to live right, anybody trying to do the right thing, it's like there's so much that is speaking evil of, right? There's so much. And I believe we have to understand this, because when we don't get what's going on here, sometimes we get in the world and we don't understand why our life is the way it is, and we run into mishaps and we run into things and we think we're doing right. But we can't just think, brothers and sisters. We have to know by scriptures, right? Just like when Paul said there that I didn't know that. If we don't know, we can't. We say, I'm sorry. We do the right thing in knowing what's going on. But even at that, we have to be careful of trying to judge others. Or, if we put this in today's movie world, this would be a total different aspect, right? This guy would be grabbing swords and telling them he didn't do no wrong and, making a mess of them all. But by biblical standards, humbly saying, okay, I'm going to listen to whatever you said, and now I'm going to tell my side. And my side is, I didn't do any of that. And I have witnesses can prove I ain't done any of this. And again, he could have said all kinds of things instead of the way he said it. So to be the salt of the earth, to be the true loving kindness, right? To do the right thing, even when all seems against him, even when it seems like it's terrible, right? They're wanting, if you look at that aspect, they're trying to kill him. They want him dead. And he's saying, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. He's still keeping the word. He's still doing the best. And just like that verse there, that he's cheerfully doing it. He's judge, you've been a judge for many years. He's not saying you're not the judge of me, right? The things that we see and hear today, you can't judge me. You can't tell me. Don't tell me what to do. All these things that we hear going on, he's saying, you are a judge. You've been a judge for years. And let me just speak about, right? Let me just tell you my side of the story. And I think a lot of times if we would even hear that out, we probably would hear a different story in a lot of these cases. But overall, we want to be loving kind, even in the worst of worst, right? Even when the accusers are coming and saying all kinds of accusations and saying all this, and people are going to join with that, right? People are going to say, well, why would they say that if it wasn't true? Why would they do this if it wasn't true? Why would they bring him all through? You don't think there were scoffers and everything there that was saying they would have brought Paul all through this. They wouldn't have done this unless he did something wrong. And you're not careful, if he would have went in that direction that most do, that would have probably got him in some serious trouble. If he would have started breaking, like he said, I'm keeping the law. You don't, if he would have started breaking the very commandments, the very scriptures, and there's no condoning that. I know sometimes we get upset and things don't go our way, and we want to say, bad things and bad evil reports, and if this person would have treated me this way, that person would have done me that, and we're not careful, we can really get out there in the wrong direction. But this proves to me of what he was sent to do, how he's hanging in there and keeping his shalom. I don't see how people can say the things they say. I mean, to me, this is an attribute of how we are supposed to, even in the face of death, even if, and we know the ending of this, we know what happens, but, and I think in a way he did too. I think he knew what was coming, but he's just cheerfully living his life the best he can, doing the best he can. And, I think that says a lot. If we can take all these problems and say, okay, yes, right now, everything isn't exactly peachy, right? Everything isn't going the way I thought it would go. We don't have, all the things that I thought would be going on, but we just pray and we give it to the Creator. Then Paul, after the governor had beckoned him to speak, answered, for as much as I know thou hast been many years a judge unto his nation. So he's being nice. Hey, you've been, for many years, you've been a judge. I do the more cheerfully answer for myself. He's not degrading. He's not telling people. He's not telling, who are you to judge me? I'm the apostle of the apostles. I'm the disciples of the disciples. Do you know what my name is, right? Do you know these people are all just, he ain't doing any of that. He's just, let me speak, and you're a judge, and I recognize what you are, and I recognize your position, and we're just going to go on with this trial. We're just going to keep it going. And by that, all the people, can you imagine the people that are watching this and going, who is this guy, right? This guy is different, because everybody else that comes through these trials are cursing and throwing and backbiting and telling all the bad stuff, and the high priest and all that, and throwing all the dirt out there. You ain't no, if he was really, he did say some things, but once he learned, he recanted, he repented of it. He said, I'm sorry. Because that thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship. And you notice he said he went up to worship. He didn't go there to do anything wrong. He didn't go up there to make anything evil. He didn't come to start another churchianity group. He wasn't coming and telling them how they was wrong. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogues, nor in the city. It's amazing the innocence of the people that are trying to do the right thing and just praising, just doing the right thing. I'm just praising Elohim. I'm just giving him his due. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And you get hammered for these things, and we see it all the time. We see people that, the problem after problem. And I think that's why the people go the other way. They expect it to be a different life than what it is. But we see scripture after scripture because of sin. People say, well, how come? Or how come this? Or how come? Because of sin. It's all because of sin is because all this happens, right? But those people that do sin are the ones that are trying to make more sin, right? So many people claim they keep the law, they keep Torah, they keep this and they keep that, but they're ready to publicly execute you in the street. And there's never, ever going to be enough until they see that. They want apologies on YouTube and social media, and it's never enough. They want the same thing that they're wanting here, right? Neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me. He said, you can't accuse me. You can't prove any of this, right? You can talk about it, but why am I even here? What am I doing here? Because I did nothing wrong. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so I worship Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets. So he is trying, I believe, to talk with the judge and the people there and the Romans and let them know, hey, I worship Elohim. Maybe you should do the same, right? Maybe if I can convince you I'm not an ill-mannered person, I'm not a sword for a sword, I'm not trying to poke your eyes out, I'm not trying to, say ill things of them. What kind of world would it be if we lived this way? What kind of world would we be a part of? If even the people who make the accusations, you just said, hey, whatever, say what you got to say, but it's not true. And that's all we can talk about. That's all I'm going to, it just didn't happen. That's it. What more do you want me to say? So we have to be careful in these things and have hope toward Elohim, which they themselves also allow, that there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. And the crowd goes wild, right? I mean, we have to understand these are people sitting here and, there's people listening to this. And some of those people there don't believe in the resurrection. Some of them didn't believe in this, as we read before, right? That's not what they believed in. And he's sitting here and saying, there is Elohim and there is a resurrection of the dead. There is Yeshua. And some of these people, are probably losing their minds. And some of these people may have never heard of this. Maybe there's Romans. Maybe, maybe some of these people are really like, what is this guy talking about? Their Elohim is, 'cause all my rocks and stones things don't do much for me. I end up stubbing my toe when I come in and out and all these things, right? And hereunto I exercise myself to have always a conscience void of offense toward Elohim and toward men. So, I mean, the way I see it, he's giving a mini sermon, right? He's speaking not ill, not terrible. He ain't telling them they're all going to hell, right? Hey, if you don't do this, all the things that we may have been brought up into and we've seen that we think is right. He's just saying, hey, this is the way it is, and this is what I follow, and this is what I do. And hey, just in case you can follow it too if you really want to. We have scriptures and things you can read for yourself, right? And hereunto I exercise myself to have always a conscience void of offense toward Elohim and toward men. And he proved it. He's not just saying this, we see it last chapter. He proved what he said, right? I'm sorry I spoke out of turn. I'm sorry I shouldn't have said that. I didn't know you're the high priest. So he's proving the actions of what he's doing, the way he lives. He's not just saying I live this way and then he, cursed the guy out and said, you ain't nothing to me, and things that we see going on in today's world. He apologized. He repented of it. He said, I'm sorry. Now, after many years, I came to bring alms to my nation and offerings. Whereupon certain Yehuda from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with multitude nor with tumult. I mean, the whole case here is kind of ridiculous, right? It's kind of like, what did he do? Why is this even a trial, right? Why is this even going on? But I would submit to you that there's probably people all over this world right here today that are probably thinking the same things. And a lot of people that come to the truth, that come to follow Yeshua, that come to the truth congregation, I found that one of the things I tell them anymore is get ready for the battle, right? Get ready, because now you're on the battlefield. Now it's going to begin, right? A lot of people that taught, I raise my hand, I say this, I do that, and everything's a sweet dream until you die. But we know better. We know there's sickness. We see death. We see problems. We see, everything, finances, things that are just, and people don't understand. They think, well, I come to Elohim, I come to the congregation, I come and did this, and what gives, right? How come I'm being tried? How come people are talking about me? But we see clearly that they was, Yeshua said, right? He said it's written that if they hated me, they'll hate you. They hated me before they hated you. So if we know, we see the same thing in him. They're always trying to crucify him, to stone him, to do all these things. Like him and his followers, well, we get the same, whether we like it or not, we kind of get the same attributes, whether we like it or not, whether we, it's just kind of, well, here you go. This is what you get for your time and trouble. But within that, how much of a diamond can we be? How much of that salt can we be? How much of a true believer, right? And we see times are getting worse and worse and things going on and on. So how much more can we show this world love and kindness? How much more can we smile in the face of the adversary? Yeah, you got me right now. Yeah, you might have control over things. You might have went and asked to have these things done. But guess what? Ultimately, Elohim says, yay or nay. Ultimately, eternity is a long time, right? So ultimately, he's going to win. My soul's going to be saved. Everything's going to be fine. So this little bit of turmoil and problems with this life, and I'm not saying it's easy. We see brothers and sisters that have sickness and problems, and, I want them to be healed as well. I really want them to be healed. I want them to get up and walk. I want that to happen. But what does it take for us to get to that part? I believe we're on a journey, and the more that we grow, the more that we learn, the more that we love one another, the more that we combine, the more that we can defend from these fiery darts and trials and things. Who ought to have here before thee and object if they ought against me? And that's so much that the world and the people and all these things, they just have ought against everything, right? You just can't do nothing right because why are you doing this and why do you do that? And they'll even try to use positions, scriptures, things against you, right? I think we all know that. They'll take one verse and throw it on you, and you're wrong because this one verse, the scriptures are not made to be a weapon against anybody or anything, right? You don't, oh, well, this verse says, and this verse says. So we have to be careful of even participating. I've come to the point where I'm just disengaged, right? And believe me, at one point, let's get it on, right? It's like, let's rumble, let's go. I'm going to prove, but just like we see here, I did no wrong, I didn't do it, and that's that. If you prove it or not, and nobody can prove it. Now you can lie, that's what he's saying here. You can, they can obviously go and lie and say like they have, but that's all it is lies, right? We'll do one more verse and then we'll open it up. Or else let they some here say, if they have found any evil doing in me while I stood before the council. So even though he's being tried, even though that all this is going on, just like we seen with last week, the only thing we said is he said one thing, but he quickly made that right. And I think we realize that we can say things throughout the day. We can say things throughout the week. We can have things that we just don't like. That's human, right? I don't like my situation. I don't like this. But we pray and we repent and we get better. This is all about getting better, not arriving, right? I am super duper, whatever title insert here, right? And I put it on the board, and guess what? Everybody shall listen to me, or else they're, how does that help anything? Is that what he's saying? Is this what Yeshua came and said to them? Correction's one thing and lovingly doing it, but most of the time is just, taking care of ourselves, taking care of that man, woman in the mirror, and making sure they're doing the right thing, and making sure this life, this trial of life, that we're winning at it, right? And I don't mean finances and planes and cars and boats and yachts. And we're winning because Elohim. We're winning because Yeshua. We're winning because we're reading and understanding. And it's great that, brothers and sisters here, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to help each other with this. We're trying to say, if you need a hand, if you need help, and the prayers are being answered. Maybe not all of them, but our prayers are being heard. Our prayers are being answered. And that means something, that means a lot. I thank you all for listening. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great and wonderful day. I will conclude there and open it up to questions or Shalom.